The camera zooms in on the courtroom. The room is alive with an electric tension, every eye locked on the two figures at the center, Judge Tanya Chutkan, stern and unwavering, and Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, calm but visibly poised for what's to come. The sound of the gavel echoes, and for a moment, everything falls silent. Judge Chutkan's voice breaks the stillness, sharp and commanding. Congresswoman Crockett, your actions today are an affront to the very dignity of this institution. I caution you now, your behavior will not be tolerated. This is your final warning. The words hit like a thunderclap, echoing through the courtroom, reverberating through the airwaves to millions of viewers watching live. The camera lingers on Judge Chutkan, her face a mask of authority, unflinching and severe. She delivers the final blow. Proceed with respect, or face the consequences. The tension is palpable. The weight of Chutkan's words settles heavily on the room, on the audience, and on Jasmine herself. For a fleeting moment, time seems to stop. The camera shifts focus to Jasmine Crockett. Her face remains a picture of composure, her eyes calm, but a flicker of something deeper, determination, maybe, lurks beneath the surface. Every eye in the room is on her. She knows what's at stake. The world is watching. And in that moment, Jasmine's resolve is clear. She's not rattled. She's unshaken. The room waits for her response. The camera captures her every subtle movement, from the rise of her chin to the almost imperceptible deep breath she takes. She stands as a quiet force in the face of overwhelming authority. The world holds its breath. What happens next left everyone stunned. The silence that follows is deafening. Jasmine Crockett doesn't flinch, doesn't back down. She meets Chutkan's glare with a calmness that feels almost defiant. Her answer is coming. And it will change everything. The camera pulls back from Jasmine Crockett, still holding her ground in the face of Judge Chutkan's unrelenting warning. As the tension in the room swells, it's clear this isn't just another courtroom debate. This is something much bigger. The political climate has been on edge for months, as the nation watches every move, every decision, with bated breath. The lines between the judicial system and elected officials have never been more blurred. Courtrooms have become battlegrounds, and every decision is a ripple in a larger, more dangerous wave. Justice is no longer just about law, it's about power. And the stakes are higher than ever. Social media feeds are on fire. A split screen of pundits, commentators, and analysts rolls across the screen. The question is, one commentator on CNN says, can an elected official, someone like Congresswoman Crockett, hold their ground in the face of judicial overreach? Can the judiciary truly be checked when its power exceeds the limits of its mandate? Another segment, this one on Fox News, cuts to a fiery debate. We've seen it before, the conservative pundit scoffs. The political class oversteps, but the courts are supposed to be impartial, neutral. Judge Chutkan's warning should have been a wake-up call for all of us. She's a seasoned judge, standing up for the integrity of the law. The screen flashes a quick succession of tweets, each more inflammatory than the last. Crockett's arrogance is unmatched. Someone needs to take her down. This isn't just about the law. This is about the power to speak truth to power. Will Jasmine Crockett back down, or will she fight back against the very institution meant to protect us? The atmosphere is electric, every moment of the trial adding fuel to the fire. The public isn't just watching a trial unfold, they're witnessing a larger ideological battle. The stakes are no longer limited to the courtroom. The outcome of this confrontation will reverberate across America, shaping political discourse for years to come. The camera cuts to a montage of images from across the nation, protesters in the streets, hashtags trending across platforms, signs demanding accountability from both the judiciary and elected officials. People are divided, on one side, those who believe the judiciary must be upheld at all costs, on the other, those who demand that politicians be given the room to challenge and question the systems that govern them. The news cycle continues to churn, with outlets speculating on what could come next. This is a critical moment in American democracy, historian adds, speaking on MSNBC. What happens here, whether Judge Chutkan succeeds in silencing Crockett, or whether the Congresswoman stands her ground, will have lasting implications on the future of the separation of powers. Meanwhile, online, a movement begins to form. The hashtag Crockett vs. Chutkan is trending worldwide. People are glued to their screens, waiting for the next shocking turn. Some want Crockett to fight back, to stand up for the underdog, to prove that even in the face of immense power, individuals can still make their voices heard. Others are calling for Chutkan to assert her authority, to remind the political class that no one is above the law. The divide is clear, and it's only deepening. This is no longer just a debate. This is about defining who we are as a nation, one pundit says, voice full of gravity. The line between the judicial system and the political world has never been this thin. But just as everyone thinks they have the narrative figured out, the moment shifts. The camera cuts back to Judge Chutkan, her eyes narrowing. But it's Jasmine who now takes the stage. Her poised silence speaks volumes. She doesn't need to say anything yet. The world knows she's about to change everything. The tension builds, the clock ticking down to the next pivotal moment. But what happens next changes everything. Judge Tanya Chutkan's rise to power in the judiciary has been anything but ordinary. With a reputation as one of the most formidable figures on the federal bench, she has made a name for herself through decisive rulings that leave no room for ambiguity. Her every decision is calculated, every word measured, and every gavel strike a reminder of her unwavering control over the courtroom. Born and raised in the heart of Washington, D.C., Chutkan was a product of the city's highest legal circles. She earned her law degree from the prestigious University of Pennsylvania, where she quickly established herself as a force to be reckoned with. But it wasn't just her academic achievements that set her apart, it was her steely demeanor, her refusal to back down, even when faced with monumental opposition. Her first major case as a young prosecutor marked the beginning of her legendary career. It wasn't the case itself that garnered attention, but how she handled it. A prominent businessman, accused of financial crimes, tried to play the system, throwing money, influence, and threats at anyone who dared challenge him. Most would have faltered under the pressure, but not Chutkan. She confronted the power players head-on, unflinching in her pursuit of justice. The courtroom was her arena, and she made it clear that no one, no matter how high their station, would be exempt from accountability. That victory set the stage for her future. She ascended to the bench with a reputation for being unforgiving. Those who appeared before her quickly learned that Chutkan ruled with an iron fist. Her no-nonsense approach was both admired and feared. She became known for her strict sentencing, her sharp language, and her determination to impose order on what she viewed as a chaotic political landscape. Her rulings were often criticized for being overly harsh, especially when it came to politicians and activists who clashed with the legal system. Critics accused her of overreach, of wielding her power as a weapon rather than an instrument of justice. And yet, despite the controversies surrounding her, Judge Chutkan's influence continued to grow. She became a favorite of the establishment, a reliable enforcer of the status quo. She made decisions that many felt were necessary to maintain order, but her harsh methods alienated a growing number of those who saw her as a symbol of a system rigged against the common people. In her mind, justice was black and white, and there was no room for negotiation. To her, the law was sacred, and any challenge to it was a threat to the very fabric of American society. Her approach was direct, her actions deliberate. She wasn't a judge who would entertain impassioned speeches or tolerate emotional appeals. Her courtroom was a place for precision and logic, where facts triumphed over rhetoric. And if you were on the wrong side of the law, you would feel the full force of her authority. But in the eyes of many, her rigid stance began to feel less like justice and more like tyranny. She was becoming the embodiment of a legal system that was out of touch with the struggles of everyday people. While politicians waged their wars on the floor of Congress, it was Judge Chutkan's gavel that wielded the final word. And then came Jasmine Crockett. Jasmine's rise in politics had been nothing short of meteoric. Where Chutkan's authority had been established through years of silence, discipline, and power, Crockett's influence came from her voice, loud, passionate, and unapologetically real. Jasmine represented a new kind of politician, one who didn't bow to the establishment or seek approval from the legal elite. She was a force of nature, standing for justice, equality, and, most importantly, the people who had been left behind by the very systems that Judge Chutkan defended. The contrast between the two women could not be starker. Chutkan was the epitome of the status quo, stoic, powerful, and unyielding. She represented the system as it was, rigid, unforgiving, and rooted in tradition. Crockett, on the other hand, was a reflection of the changing times, an outspoken advocate for justice and progress, driven by her commitment to fight for the marginalized. And it was this clash of ideals that would set the stage for their inevitable confrontation. Judge Chutkan's authority had been challenged before, but never like this. Never by someone so poised, so ready to dismantle the very foundation on which she had built her power. Jasmine's calm demeanor, her ability to maintain composure in the face of overwhelming pressure, was the one thing that Chutkan had never encountered in her courtroom. She was used to silence, to submission, to people trembling before her. But Jasmine stood unshaken, and that unnerved Chutkan more than anything else. It wasn't just about the case anymore. This was about control. Judge Chutkan, who had always relied on the weight of her power to silence those who dared defy her, was about to face a challenge from someone who refused to be intimidated. It was no longer a question of who was right or wrong, it was a question of who could hold the most power. And in that moment, Judge Chutkan realized that her control might not be as absolute as she thought. As the room watched in tense silence, Judge Chutkan felt the uneasy stirrings of doubt creeping into her thoughts. She had never been so close to losing control, until now. And in that moment, the first cracks in her seemingly invincible armor began to show. What would happen next? Could Judge Chutkan, the embodiment of legal authority, withstand a challenge from someone as seemingly calm as Jasmine Crockett? The stakes were higher than ever, and what happened next would shape the future of both their careers, and perhaps, the very fabric of America's political system. Jasmine Crockett never set out to be a hero, but her journey to Congress was anything but ordinary. Raised in the heart of Dallas, Texas, Jasmine grew up in a working-class neighborhood where the struggle for survival was a daily reality. Her mother, a public school teacher, and her father, a firefighter, instilled in her the values of hard work, integrity, and the belief that no matter the odds, justice would always prevail, if you fought hard enough for it. From a young age, Jasmine had a fierce sense of right and wrong. She was the type of child who would argue with authority, challenge injustices, and stand up for those who had no voice. Her experiences growing up in a predominantly black community, where systemic inequalities were impossible to ignore, shaped her worldview. She was often the only voice at the table, advocating for the marginalized and voiceless in her community, even as a teenager. That rebellious streak never left her. In college, she pursued a law degree at the University of Houston, determined to use her education as a tool to fight for the rights of her people. But it wasn't just the law that called to her, it was the politics behind it. It was the realization that real change could only come when people who understood the struggles of everyday Americans had a seat at the table. Jasmine was deeply affected by the stories of those around her, the stories of single mothers struggling to make ends meet, the stories of black men and women whose voices were erased in policy decisions, and the stories of communities suffocating under the weight of institutional racism. After law school, Jasmine worked in the public defender's office, where she quickly gained a reputation for her ability to empathize with her clients while fiercely advocating for them. But the deeper she dove into the legal world, the more she realized that the real battles weren't fought in courtrooms, they were fought in the halls of Congress. It was there, in those chambers of power, where decisions were made that affected the lives of the people she represented. It was there that she could truly make a difference. So, Jasmine took the leap. She ran for Congress, unflinching in the face of overwhelming odds. Her candidacy was unconventional, a bold move in a political world dominated by corporate interests and the establishment elite. She knew the challenges she'd face: as a black woman, as a progressive voice, and as someone who refused to bow to the pressures of party politics. Yet, she was undeterred. She ran with the slogan, "For the people, not the powerful," and her message resonated with a growing number of voters who felt left behind by the system. Her first campaign was an uphill battle. She faced both external and internal opposition. On one hand, the establishment tried to stifle her, candidates with more money and influence sought to drown her out with their resources. On the other, she had to navigate a political landscape that often treated her with suspicion, questioning her motives because of her race and background. Some told her she wasn't politically seasoned enough, others doubted her ability to win. But Jasmine's drive was unwavering. She hit the streets, meeting voters face to face, speaking with those who had been ignored for too long. She became the voice for those who had no one else to speak for them. Victory came not just through her political savvy, but through her authentic connection with people. She wasn't a polished, corporate-backed candidate. She was a fighter for justice. When she won her seat in Congress, it wasn't just a victory for her, it was a victory for the communities who had been neglected, for the people who had never seen themselves represented in the halls of power. But that victory came with its own set of challenges. As a black woman in a predominantly white and male-dominated institution, Jasmine quickly learned that every move she made was scrutinized more heavily than her colleagues. Every word she spoke was dissected, every decision questioned. Her passion for justice often clashed with the political games that were being played behind closed doors. Jasmine was not one to play it safe or play along with the status quo. She wasn't interested in making compromises for the sake of political expediency. She was there to fight for her constituents, to dismantle the systems that kept them oppressed, and to demand justice for those who had been denied it for far too long. Her experiences in Congress haven't been easy. She's faced backlash from colleagues who view her as a threat, from people who believe she's too radical, too outspoken. She's been called an outsider by those who wish she would just fall in line. But instead of crumbling under the weight of it all, Jasmine has only grown stronger. Her calmness under pressure is her superpower. Where others would react with anger or frustration, Jasmine remains poised, thinking carefully before she speaks, but never backing down from her principles. In the face of immense pressure, Jasmine has become a master at navigating conflict. She has learned that in politics, where every word is scrutinized, silence can be just as powerful as speech. She knows when to wait for the right moment, when to hold her ground, and when to use her words as weapons. She has an uncanny ability to stay grounded, to center herself, even when everything around her is chaotic. This composed strength, combined with her unyielding commitment to justice, has made her one of the most effective and respected figures in Congress. Jasmine Crockett is not just a politician, she is a movement. Her authenticity, her commitment to justice, and her unwavering resolve make her a force to be reckoned with. She doesn't just talk about change, she embodies it. And in the face of Judge Tanya Chutkan's unrelenting authority, Jasmine's calm but powerful demeanor will be put to the ultimate test. But Jasmine knows this fight is about more than just herself, it's about her constituents, it's about the future of American democracy, and it's about proving that even in the face of overwhelming power, one voice can make all the difference. The courtroom hums with a quiet intensity as Judge Tanya Chutkan's gavel falls again, signaling the beginning of the next round. The eyes of the room are fixed on Jasmine Crockett, whose composure contrasts sharply with the sharpness of Chutkan's words. The air feels thick with the weight of the moment. This is no longer just about the law, it's about a clash of ideals, a test of wills. Chutkan leans forward, her tone becoming colder, more authoritative. Congresswoman, I've made myself clear. Your conduct is intolerable, and your attempts to challenge the legal system in this manner are dangerous. You would be wise to remember your place in this courtroom. Her words hang in the air, each syllable dripping with disdain. The room goes silent, anticipating Jasmine's response. Jasmine, however, remains unshaken. She straightens her posture, her voice calm but measured. With all due respect, Judge, my place is here, in this courtroom, standing up for those who have been silenced by this system for too long. If challenging unjust authority is a danger, then I am guilty as charged. The tension in the room thickens. Judge Chutkan's face tightens, her lips pressed into a thin line. You would do well to remember that you are not above the law. This courtroom demands respect. If you can't provide it, there will be consequences. A ripple of murmur spreads through the courtroom. The cameras zoom in on Chutkan's steely gaze, but it's Jasmine who commands the screen. She doesn't flinch. Respect is earned, Judge. And respect isn't given simply because you wear a robe. It's earned by listening to the people, by upholding the values of justice, not protecting the very systems that oppress them. Chutkan's jaw tightens. Her patience is thinning, but she doesn't lose control, not yet. She leans forward again, her voice a low growl. You may be in the position to make demands in Congress, but here, this is my courtroom. And I won't tolerate your reckless rhetoric. If you continue to defy my authority, I'll have no choice but to hold you in contempt. The words hit like a slap. It's a warning, a direct threat. The audience feels the chill in the air. Yet, Jasmine doesn't flinch. Instead, she takes a steadying breath, her voice unbroken, as if she's been here before. I've been called reckless before, Judge. By people who were too afraid to stand up to the systems that crushed them. I've seen firsthand what happens when we allow fear to silence the truth. But I won't be that person. Not today. Not ever. Chutkan's hands tighten into fists, her nails digging into the wood of the bench. Her patience is rapidly waning. Do you think this is some kind of political game, Congresswoman? Do you think you can grandstand your way through this courtroom, turning my proceedings into a spectacle? You've crossed the line, and I'll make sure you understand the consequences. There's a brief, sharp silence. The entire courtroom holds its breath. Jasmine's voice rings out again, calm but unwavering. I'm not here for a spectacle, Judge. I'm here because people like you think they can intimidate those who challenge the status quo. You're right, I'm not here to play by your rules. I'm here to make sure the voices that have been silenced get heard. Chutkan's face reddens. Her composure slips as the words hit too close to home. The room feels the heat of her anger, but Jasmine remains composed, almost detached. Chutkan tries to regain control, but the tension between them is undeniable. I will not be talked down to by an elected official who has no respect for the rule of law. This is the last warning, Congresswoman. Cross me again, and there will be consequences you won't be able to undo. Jasmine's eyes narrow, her stance unyielding. The contrast between the two women couldn't be starker, Chutkan, desperate to assert her authority, and Jasmine, standing firm in the face of it. The audience watches, captivated by the exchange, knowing the stakes are far beyond this courtroom. The stakes are about who controls the narrative, who defines the truth, and who gets to decide what justice really looks like. The tension in the room is almost unbearable, but it's Jasmine who commands the space. Her calmness doesn't just defy Chutkan's authority, it undermines it. I'm not here to back down, Judge. I'm here to stand up for what's right, no matter what you threaten me with. You're not intimidating me. And you're not going to silence me. Not today. Chutkan takes a deep breath, her face a mask of fury and frustration. She stands, as if preparing to end the exchange. But Jasmine holds her ground, her quiet strength turning the courtroom into a battleground for something much larger than a simple legal dispute. The room falls silent once again, but this time, the silence feels different. It's charged with the weight of what's at stake. The world is watching, and Jasmine Crockett has just shown that she won't back down, no matter the cost. This is no longer just a legal battle, it's a war for power, for control, and for the future of justice itself. What happens next is uncertain, but one thing is clear, the gloves are off, and this fight has only just begun. The courtroom is still. Judge Tanya Chutkan stands at her bench, her fingers drumming against the surface, her eyes locked on Jasmine Crockett, whose calm but unwavering gaze never wavers. It's as if time has come to a standstill, the tension between them palpable in the air. Every breath feels like it might be the last before the final clash. Jasmine, though, remains as composed as ever. Her earlier response, while sharp and pointed, had only been the opening. Now, she prepares to shift from restraint to bold clarity, the kind of clarity that will cut through Chutkan's towering authority with precision. Her voice remains steady, but there's a subtle shift in her demeanor. The once measured tone becomes deliberate, commanding. Judge Chutkan, she begins, each word calculated to hit with impact. You've made your warnings. You've threatened consequences. But what you fail to acknowledge is the very basis of this conversation. The law is not your personal tool to enforce your will. It is the people's tool. And the people have a right to be heard. She steps forward slightly, and the room feels the weight of her movement. Your authority may be rooted in your title, but your justice is rooted in power. And what you call the law, what you call justice, it isn't the same for everyone. It's only fair when it suits your narrative. A murmur runs through the courtroom. The subtle shift in Jasmine's voice grabs everyone's attention. This isn't a political statement, this is the truth being laid bare. Chutkan's jaw tightens. Her eyes narrow, but Jasmine doesn't look away. She's not intimidated. She's not backing down. Jasmine continues, the sharpness of her words cutting through the room like a hot knife through butter. The people who you claim to protect are the same people whose voices you've dismissed time and time again. I stand here because they cannot. I stand here because it's time for the truth to be heard, even if it threatens the very foundation you've built your authority on. Chutkan takes a step back, the fury that had been building in her tightening around her chest. She was used to being feared. She was used to commanding the room. But Jasmine's presence isn't just defying her authority, it's exposing the cracks beneath it. Chutkan's grip on the bench tightens, her knuckles white, but her voice falters just slightly. You're out of line, Congresswoman, she spits out. You're twisting the truth to fit your own agenda. But Jasmine doesn't flinch. Is it my agenda, Judge, or the agenda of those who have been silenced for far too long? You sit there in your courtroom, in your ivory tower, pretending that the law operates equally for all. But it doesn't. It never has. The crowd stirs. Gasps ripple through the room as the truth of her words sinks in. People in the audience exchange glances. This is not the reaction they were expecting. Judge Chutkan, a towering figure in the legal world, is being outmaneuvered by a calm, unrelenting force. Jasmine turns slightly, her voice steady but powerful as she moves toward the center of the room. You want to talk about respect, Judge? You want to talk about authority? Respect is not earned through intimidation. It is earned through truth. It is earned through integrity. And right now, the truth is this: your authority is not above scrutiny, and your actions are not above being questioned. It's time someone did it. There's a moment of silence, a brief pause before the tension snaps like a taut wire. Chutkan, unable to hold her composure any longer, rises sharply, her face red with anger. I will not allow you to insult this court any longer, Congresswoman. If you refuse to respect the rules of this courtroom, I will have you removed. But Jasmine's words come with surgical precision, cutting through Chutkan's threats like she's dismantling a house of cards. You're right, Judge, she says, her voice quieter now, but no less forceful. You have the power to remove me from this courtroom. But you cannot remove the truth. You cannot silence what is already being said. People are waking up, Judge. And they're not going to let you keep running this system of injustice any longer. The room falls into stunned silence. Chutkan, who once stood as an unassailable figure, now seems like she's grasping at something, anything, to regain her authority. But Jasmine Crockett's calm demeanor, her unshakable poise, has already shifted the balance of power. Chutkan opens her mouth, trying to force words out, but they falter. She struggles, her tongue betraying her, her authority slipping in real time. The once imposing figure now looks rattled, cornered, her eyes darting to the sides as if seeking backup, seeking a way to regain control. But it's too late. Jasmine stands tall, her presence alone dominating the space. Her calmness is no longer just a sign of composure, it has become her greatest strength. You've built a career on the illusion that the law serves justice. But when that justice doesn't reach everyone equally, it becomes nothing more than a tool of the powerful to keep the rest of us in line. I won't stand for it, Judge. And neither will the people who've been silenced for too long. The camera zooms in on Chutkan's face, capturing the exact moment when her grip on control completely crumbles. The once imposing judge seems smaller now, her eyes flickering with the realization that Jasmine's words are not only true, they're undeniable. For the first time, Judge Chutkan looks uncertain, her facade of unshakable authority beginning to fracture. The room reacts. A gasp rises from the audience, followed by a ripple of murmurs, a buzz of approval. A few of the spectators can be seen nodding in agreement, their faces lit with a mix of admiration and disbelief. Social media is already lighting up, tweets, posts, hashtags flooding in. Hashtag Jasmine vs. Chutkan is trending, and the world is watching as the power dynamics in this room begin to shift dramatically. Jasmine doesn't need to say another word. Her quiet strength has already delivered the blow. She doesn't need to raise her voice. Her calm confidence has done the work for her. The room, the court, the nation, they're all transfixed by the realization that this battle for justice is no longer just a legal debate. It's a reckoning. Judge Chutkan stumbles, her voice weak as she attempts a rebuttal, but it's clear the power has already shifted. The courtroom waits for her next move, but Jasmine knows she has already won. The game has changed. The truth has been laid bare, and Jasmine Crockett, poised and unwavering, has just delivered the final, undeniable blow. The room holds its breath. The world watches. And the tension lingers in the air like a storm about to break. Jasmine Crockett stands tall, ready for whatever comes next, but the question now isn't whether she can survive this battle. The question is, can Judge Chutkan? The moment the gavel struck, signaling the end of the courtroom confrontation, the world outside the courtroom began to stir. The floodgates opened. Social media erupted almost instantly. Twitter was alight with activity. The hashtag Jasmine vs. Chutkan began trending worldwide within seconds, as users from all walks of life jumped into the fray, sharing their reactions, their opinions, and their reflections on the now viral moment. Jasmine Crockett just shut down Judge Chutkan in the most graceful way imaginable. This is the leadership we need, one tweet read, quickly accumulating thousands of likes and retweets. She didn't just win this argument, she changed the game. Hashtag Jasmine vs. Chutkan. The flood of reactions came from every direction, but the overwhelming tone was admiration, awe, and support for Jasmine. Memes began circulating, quick-witted and sharp, with images of Jasmine standing tall in the courtroom, her calm confidence radiating from every frame. When you're right, you're right. Hashtag Jasmine vs. Chutkan, one meme said, featuring a close-up of Jasmine's unwavering face as Chutkan stumbled. Another captioned an image of Chutkan's flustered expression, when you mess with the wrong congresswoman. Instagram was flooded with posts, too. Influencers, activists, and regular users shared clips of the moment. The video of Jasmine's mic drop counterattack quickly became a looped sensation, racking up millions of views. This is what dignity looks like. Hashtag Jasmine vs. Chutkan, read one post with the viral video of Jasmine's final words. Celebrities jumped in as well, endorsing Jasmine's response. Actress and activist Kerry Washington posted, "At Jasmine Crockett is the leader we need in this country. Fearless, graceful, and unapologetically true to herself." Hashtag Jasmine vs. Chutkan. As the reactions flooded in, so did the analysis. Political commentators across the media landscape weighed in, dissecting the impact of the moment. On CNN, political analyst David Axelrod couldn't hide his astonishment. What we saw today wasn't just a clash between a judge and an elected official. It was a seismic shift in how we view authority in this country. Jasmine Crockett's response has the power to redefine what we expect from our leaders. She stood there with grace and strength, showing us that the true measure of leadership is not just in the ability to speak, but in the ability to remain unwavering in your principles under pressure. On MSNBC, former Congresswoman Donna Edwards was equally stunned. What Jasmine did today was revolutionary. It's not just about what happened in that courtroom. It's about what it represents. We're seeing more and more women of color stepping up, breaking through barriers, and demanding respect. This moment is history-making. The focus quickly shifted from the confrontation itself to the broader implications. Commentators on both sides of the aisle started to weigh the long-term effects of the exchange. Political analyst and former Republican strategist Ana Navarro raised a point on The View: it's hard to ignore the symbolism of this moment. Here you have a black woman, standing in defiance not just of a judge, but of a broken system that has long held the powerful accountable while letting the rest of us down. Jasmine Crockett didn't just stand up for herself, she stood up for the countless voices silenced by people like Judge Chutkan. Meanwhile, conservative outlets were quick to weigh in with skepticism, though even they couldn't ignore the viral impact. While Crockett's remarks were bold, the question remains, was she out of line? One Fox News segment argued. It's a fine line between standing up for your principles and disrespecting the authority of the court. There's a reason judges like Chutkan are respected. However, the skepticism from the right only seemed to bolster the support on the left. They're scared because Jasmine is speaking the truth, tweeted activist Brittany Packnett Cunningham. They can't handle the fact that women like her are taking back power. Across the political spectrum, the conversation shifted toward the importance of this moment for women in politics. For women of color, especially. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton weighed in through an op-ed: this moment is bigger than the courtroom. It's about the struggle for equity in our democracy. It's about the fight for visibility, for dignity, and for the truth. The op-ed gained traction, resonating with readers who recognized Jasmine's words as a reflection of the wider struggles they face every day. Journalists echoed similar sentiments, pointing out the long history of women of color being pushed aside in American politics. What Crockett did was a direct challenge to the power structures that have kept women like her, and people like her, on the periphery, said writer Ibram X. Kendi in the New York Times. Jasmine didn't just win a battle in a courtroom. She fought for every person who has ever been told they don't belong, that their voice doesn't matter. But it wasn't just analysts and celebrities reacting, real people, the ones who stood to benefit most from Jasmine's resilience, were also paying attention. In neighborhoods across the country, from urban centers to small towns, people were talking. Jasmine's words weren't just resonating with the political elite, they were reverberating through the streets, through communities that had long felt unheard. The people in these communities, who had often felt their struggles dismissed by those in power, saw themselves in Jasmine. Her fight was their fight. And as her words spread, the pulse of the nation seemed to sync with the beat of progress. As the days wore on, the ripple effect continued to expand. In the halls of Congress, Jasmine Crockett's name was now a rallying cry for both allies and opponents alike. Fellow progressives praised her courage, while conservatives began to question their own strategies, unsure of how to combat this new wave of unapologetic leadership. Some worried it marked a turning point in American politics, where power no longer belonged solely to the entrenched elite, but to those willing to stand tall against the system. All the while, Jasmine remained unfazed. She wasn't interested in the praise. She wasn't focused on the debates. She was focused on what came next, the work that needed to be done, the people who still needed her voice. In a world where words were often weaponized against the powerless, Jasmine had shown that words could also be a tool of empowerment, resilience, and resistance. For the moment, she had delivered a victory. But the battle was far from over. The shockwaves of that day, the implications for women in politics, racial dynamics, and the power structures at play, would continue to unfold. And Jasmine Crockett's calm response had only set the stage for something much larger, something that would resonate far beyond the confines of the courtroom. The echoes of the confrontation between Judge Tanya Chutkan and Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett still reverberated long after the courtroom had emptied. The world had watched as the two women clashed, not just over legal matters, but over the very essence of power and justice. What had started as a heated exchange between authority and defiance had morphed into something much larger, a defining moment in the struggle for truth, dignity, and the very soul of American democracy. As the dust settled, the story of that day began to take on new meaning. It wasn't just about a politician standing up to a judge. It was about the power of resilience, the strength that comes not from dominance or aggression, but from quiet, unwavering resolve. Jasmine Crockett had not sought to dominate the courtroom with fiery rhetoric or grandiose gestures. Instead, she had wielded the most powerful tool of all, her calmness. She had stood her ground, not with force, but with integrity. She had reframed the entire confrontation, turning what was meant to be a moment of humiliation into a victory for the very values that Judge Chutkan had claimed to uphold. Jasmine's strength in the face of Chutkan's oppressive authority had been her ability to remain steadfast. While Chutkan's anger and arrogance had spiraled, Jasmine's composure only deepened, her focus unshakable. She had faced not just a powerful judge, but the institutional forces that often sought to silence voices like hers, voices that challenged the status quo, that demanded equality and justice. And in that moment, Jasmine's words had become a call for a new kind of leadership, a leadership rooted in dignity, calm, and truth. Judge Chutkan, on the other hand, had been a stark reminder of how unchecked power can erode its own legitimacy. In the beginning, she had appeared as an unassailable figure, her authority bolstered by years of judicial experience, her presence commanding respect. But as the confrontation unfolded, the cracks in her armor began to show. Her arrogance, her unwillingness to listen, and her quick resort to threats had undermined her position. Where Jasmine had shown growth, humility, and poise, Chutkan's pride and stubbornness led her down a path of increasing frustration. Her authority crumbled not because of the facts of the case, but because she had lost the very thing that gave her power, her ability to command respect without resorting to force. The contrast between the two women was glaring. Jasmine, who had been faced with challenge after challenge throughout her career, had embraced the pressure. She had faced the adversities of being a black woman in a predominantly white institution, of standing up for a cause that was often met with resistance and ridicule. Yet, instead of succumbing to anger or despair, Jasmine had maintained her composure. She had risen above the chaos, embodying the very principles she fought for. Her calmness in the face of adversity had become her greatest strength, a strength that had not only preserved her dignity but had exposed the vulnerabilities of the system she was up against. For Jasmine, the lesson was clear: in a world that often demands we raise our voices in anger, the true power lies in the ability to stand firm without losing our integrity. Her response wasn't just a personal victory, it was a demonstration of what it means to lead with dignity. It was a reminder that calmness and grace are not signs of weakness, but of inner strength. She had faced a formidable opponent, but it wasn't her fire or her anger that had won the day, it was her unwavering commitment to truth and justice. The lesson for the world was equally profound. The exchange between Jasmine and Chutkan wasn't just a political debate, it was a lesson in the human capacity for resilience. It was a reminder that, no matter how powerful or intimidating the forces arrayed against us, we always have the ability to choose how we respond. And when we choose dignity, when we choose to stay calm in the face of adversity, we empower ourselves and those around us. Jasmine had shown the world that, even in the most charged, high-stakes moments, the most powerful thing we can do is to hold true to our principles. For Judge Chutkan, the confrontation had been a moment of personal reflection, whether she chose to recognize it or not. Her approach, based on authority, control, and the unquestionable right to impose her will, had faltered when confronted with the quiet power of dignity. It was a stark reminder of how the abuse of power, the arrogance that often accompanies authority, can undermine the very systems it's meant to protect. Jasmine's calmness had exposed the vulnerability beneath Chutkan's authoritarian veneer, reminding the world that true strength lies not in the ability to dominate, but in the ability to listen, to engage, and to respect those who challenge us. In the end, the moral lesson was clear: dignity, calmness, and truth would always triumph over arrogance, bigotry, or corruption. Jasmine Crockett had shown that in the face of overwhelming power, one voice, one unwavering stand for what is right, could shake the foundations of the system. She had redefined what it meant to be a leader. She had shown the world that leadership is not about wielding power, it's about using your voice to protect the powerless, to speak truth to those who would rather ignore it, and to rise above the chaos with grace. And as the world looked on, they saw something greater than a political victory. They saw a new model for leadership. A model that would inspire generations to come. The courtroom clash between Judge Tanya Chutkan and Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett will be remembered as more than just a moment of tension. It became a defining moment in the struggle for political resilience, a moment that revealed the power of standing up for what's right, even when faced with overwhelming authority. Judge Chutkan's warning, meant to silence and intimidate, only set the stage for Jasmine's incredible display of calm, dignity, and unwavering commitment to justice. Jasmine's response wasn't just a retort, it was a powerful reminder that leadership isn't about domination, it's about grace under pressure. It was a victory for every person who has ever been told to stay silent, for every voice that has been overlooked, and for every leader who has chosen to fight for truth rather than power. As we reflect on this powerful exchange, we're reminded of the importance of standing up for justice, not through anger or aggression, but with strength and dignity. Jasmine Crockett showed us that the true measure of leadership is not how loudly you speak, but how firmly you stand in the face of adversity. If you believe that dignity always prevails, if you believe in the power of calmness and truth to change the world, then join the movement for justice. Subscribe to stay part of the fight for progress. Share this video to inspire others, because moments like this don't just happen in courtrooms, they happen every day when we choose to stand for what's right. Together, we can keep fighting for a future where justice and integrity lead the way.